reinstated the contested case, but they allowed the contested case after the permit is issued. So they allow a contested case, but the burden responsibility shifts from the company and the DNR to the individual. And that's simply an unfair burden. It should not be the citizen's responsibility to prove something. It should be the company and the DNR as they are defending their project. And remember, this would be a mine law that provides a different right for citizens, a weakened right for citizens to contest than any other water project in the state. It's hard to understand why any citizen who says we the people, who believes that we ought to be a nation of law, would want a law that deprives some citizens of the equal rights that other citizens have. So those became the issues of disagreement. And frankly, those issues, if you just look at the areas, the 12 areas where it dealt with process, I'm convinced that reasonable people could have reached an agreement. I'm just going to take a couple minutes longer. I appreciate the fact that you're allowing me to take some time, but there is a big story to be told that some have not quite understood about the complicated nature of the process. The Assembly bill, after the hearing here in Hurley, you might recall that at the hearing, it's a second hearing in Hurley, very few people testified in favor of the bill. Many people testified in favor of mining, but they were very unhappy with the legislation that was being proposed, and they wanted many changes. Following that hearing, they did make some changes on the Assembly floor. Then, the bill went to the Senate, where in September, the Senate Republican leader, Senator Fitzgerald, had finally agreed to establish a 7-member bipartisan committee on mining. Chaired by Senator Kedzie, I was named a member of that committee. I've been calling for that committee since June of last year, because I really felt it's important to have open discussion on these complicated issues rather than secret discussions that could lead to hardened positions and failure. In February, the Senator Kedzie announced his own draft of a bill that was different than the Assembly bill. He was removed. The next action was for the Senate Republican leader to dissolve the committee he created, because he didn't like the recommendations that his Republican colleague was promoting. Senator Schultz and I were members of that committee, and we had been working for 4 months, listening to people, looking for a blueprint that we thought could help offer a responsible counterproduct to enable us to look for a solution between the two houses. Senator Schultz and I introduced our proposal, and there's a summary of it in the back. I don't know if there's enough, but if you want some more, please sign up and we'll be glad to send you material. We offered our proposal, and in offering our proposal, we expressed a willingness to work with others to reach compromise, including conversations with Governor Walker, who called me and called Senator Schultz. And not only did I indicate a willingness, I offered him some suggestions on where compromise could occur. Now, you have heard that Senator Schultz and I refused to compromise. The fact of the matter is that no one from the Assembly, and I see a couple of heads nodding, no one from the Assembly Republicans ever once came to my office and wanted to sit down and compromise. They met with Senator Schultz on 2 occasions. but never once sat down with me. Now, if you're willing to compromise, you have to be willing to sit down with the person who's got the same goal and try to come up with a resolution of the issues. I've had at least 10 or 12 meetings with the Department of Natural Resources Deputy Secretary, who told me a week before the Senate took up its bill that he said at the end of the meeting, it wasn't a negotiating meeting, at the end of the meeting, his quote was exactly, "I'm very optimistic, I think we can get something done." About 6 months earlier, he and I talked about the issue at great length, and he said we're not that far apart. So if you go back to what the company first asked for, clarity, predictability, certainty in a process, the fact is that my proposal and Senator Schultz's proposal was very, very similar to what they were asking for. Now to the issue of killing the bill. The Senate took up AB 426, and the procedure is to take up any amendments to the bill. The first amendment taken up was an amendment adopted by the Joint Committee on Finance the day before, 2 days before. If that amendment was adopted, the next item would be to take up Senator Schultz and my substitute amendment. If that amendment wasn't adopted, the next proposal was to take up Senator Schultz or my proposal. The motion was rejection. On a 17-16 vote, the Assembly Finance version was rejected. The next vote should have been Senator Schultz and my proposal, which would have passed on a 17-16 vote. The Senate would then have voted on the bill. It would have passed on a 17-16 vote. So you would have had an Assembly bill and a Senate bill. Now going back to your civics lessons, you know that oftentimes you have different points of view in both houses, but then there is a conference committee or a way to find compromise between the two. When the Assembly proposal was rejected, the Republican floor leader moved the bill back to committee, instead of having a vote on a bill that could pass. So what you ended up with is the Republican floor leader scheduling a vote on a proposal that could not pass, but would not schedule a vote on a proposal that would have passed, because he didn't like the proposal. So the real question is, why did he schedule one at all? It's the first time in years I've been in the legislature I've ever seen a majority leader schedule a bill that wouldn't pass. The reality is that he wanted the vote in order to make a political statement that Democrats don't care about jobs, Republicans do. And that is the instead of taking a vote that allowed both of us to take different views on the common goal of jobs and mining. Because it's okay to have a different view. But they insisted on one view only and turned it into politics. And frankly, that's the sad discourse in politics today. Now that takes us to today and the effort to continue. As I said in my in a column that is going on, I'm committed to doing whatever I can to try to get this done. I think the worst thing in the world, and I said this at a meeting that Dennis DeRosa was at in Mercer, where Dennis said last year, he said the worst thing would be if we never got anything done, whether it is Gogebic taconite or whether it is some other mining company. You need to reform the mining law so that companies feel comfortable coming into the state of Wisconsin. And I said I absolutely agree, because the worst thing would be to see people who've been so badly divided, so badly polarized, to end up with nothing more than the bitter aftertaste of partisan politics. I don't want that. I don't think anybody needs that. And I'm committed to doing what I can to try to move this issue to a point of resolution, not confrontation. Now that is a very lengthy discussion, but I think it allows the full picture. But I'd like Senator or Representative Milroy to add a few comments, and then. Now, you can do that. We've got some people that filled in slips. We've got people who filled in slips. We'll start with the people who filled in the slips. Bottom of the shoulder, Shepherds. And Leslie. Now what we're going to do is listen to the speakers, and then we'll make some comments when we're completed.
My name is Bob Walsh. I'm the town chairman of the town of Cary, and also the unit chair for the Towns Association of our county. Senator, you can see there's a fairly large crowd here today. One of the reasons that a large number feel so passionate, and actually, quite frankly, today feel a bit betrayed, is because we feel like our voice has not been heard through the process. As you know, I've sat in on most of the meetings that you've talked about. I've made trips to Madison, had an opportunity to sit with Senator Milroy. You had a chance to grill me pretty good in Milwaukee, and I don't think I've missed out on much. We just had an opportunity to hear you speak for almost 45 minutes. You're in trouble. And the reason why I say that is we keep hearing the same thing. For the last 45 minutes, you spoke at length about AB 426. What we saw in Madison was an opportunity with SB 488 with the darling boss amendments that came incredibly close to what Jauch was proposing. What we're so concerned, and when I say we, there was a contingent of us that made the trip to Madison many times. We feel so betrayed because we felt that the process was so incredibly close, knowing full well that the legislation would not automatically give us a mine, but it would certainly give us a chance. It feels like that chance has been absolutely ripped away, along with the jobs and the investment dollars. You talk about writing legislation, and I agree, the mining legislation has to be changed in Wisconsin. But also, please keep in mind, we have to attract an investor. Without an investor, we really have no opportunity for a mine. And it's interesting, when you local folks know that are on Cary Mine Convenience, we sell lottery tickets. Just to give you a perspective, we had a mad rush the last couple of days. There was a jackpot upwards of $500,000. I'm sorry, $500 million. That's $500 million. What this investor was proposing to come to our community was to invest 3 times that amount. You know, we can't grasp what winning $500 million would be. But the fact of the matter is, we're talking about, what, $1,500 million? That's a game changer in our world. You know, when we talk about our environment here, we're absolutely concerned about the environment. But we feel like our historic perspective on environment has been completely ignored. When we listen and we hear about the meetings over in Mellon, and we see those people's concerns, we empathize with them. We're also concerned. But the fact is, the history is not played out. When I listen to a man talk about worry that his lake level was going to drop because of the hole in the ground, that's quite frankly not how it works. Historically, when our mines filled in, when Montreal Mine filled in, the Gulf Floats didn't drain. The Montreal River is up. When we talk about the separation, and we talk about people being scared and having different opinions and different ideas, Senator the beautiful pictures of the waterfalls. My God, we've got waterfalls all over our county. They're all beautiful. And historically, through all of the mining efforts we've had here, none of them have quit running. We have a room full of folks who really do understand the historic perspective. From a numbers standpoint, this iron ore body, which stretches from Wakefield to Upson, has given up 300 million tons of shipped ore. This mine, working at capacity, will have to work over 30 years to catch up to what our forefathers have brought to the ground and shipped. We talk about this mine like this is, we've never seen a monster like this before. We understand and we appreciate, we understand the sensitive nature of wetlands. For Christ's sakes, our county is a third wetlands. We deal with these issues absolutely every day. And again, the opportunity to have a bill to attract an investor just gives us a chance. That's all. We rely on the DNR, the Army Corps of Engineers. And quite frankly, when you think about the company, to come up with that kind of cash, they also have to have investors. Those investors will also hold the feet of the company to the fire. There are many protections and provisions in this state, in this country, to protect against things like that. So I guess what we're asking for is, please, don't allow people to be scared. Please inform them. When the woman was sitting over in Mellon worried about her well being dry, legislators sat there and listened, and they empathized, and I understand that. No one stood up and said, well, it appears that the company may have a solution to the groundwater issue. It appears we may be able to bring water in from a different watershed to ease or alleviate. The fact is the Darling-Boss amendments covered so many things that also included private wells. And the fact that the company would be held responsible if private wells were infected. So the fact of the matter is, SB 488 with Darling-Boss amendments is extremely close. What it appeared to us to have happened was, it appeared that our representative didn't want to have anything to do with anything that the Assembly would put together, and it appeared that our representative didn't really want to compromise. Darling-Boss was a total of what, 22 amendments. Schultz-Jauch had 0. Who's compromising?
Leslie Colazar and Sam Lee.
Why don't you show a little courtesy if you wasn't get Bob by renting, shopping papers and drinking water?
Let me start by saying never again will this community let you pull a fast one on us like you did in the listening session.
Like I missed it, pull a fast one on the listening session where?
Well, let me say that never again will this community let you pull a fast one on us like you did at the listening session in Mellon on February 25th. Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. Last September, a group of people from our area went to Madison in support of mining. As we spoke to legislators, we heard many of them say, I'd love to support you, but your own senator needs to be on board first. Unfortunately, you've never shown any enthusiasm for the mining project or the company that has proposed it. Recently, we've heard you say, to have responsible mining, you have to have a responsible mining bill. Well, AB 426 was never meant to be that bill. It was meant to be a starting point. The Senate Select Committee on Mining started work to improve the bill. According to Senator Scott Fitzgerald's office, this work was going in the wrong direction. A tonnage tax added to the existing net proceeds tax increased taxes dramatically on the company. More contested case hearings were added and timelines were even more uncertain than under current law. So the Senate Majority Leader had no choice but to dissolve the committee and send AB 426 to the Joint Finance Committee. Joint Finance Committee Chair Senator Alberta Darling and Representative Robin Voss introduced 22 amendments that greatly improved AB 426, but not before the Jauch bill was introduced. The Darling-Voss amendments and the bill, now known as SB 488, were an attempt to compromise and met many of your demands. In your letter to Governor Walker on March 13th, you listed 6 provisions that are still contested, and you mentioned those at the beginning of your speech today. You do not want mining in state natural areas. Well, Amendment 17 took care of that. Amendment 19 restored the contested case hearing, but now you're concerned about where it is in the process. Floodplain zoning ordinances were addressed in Amendment number 6. And there are a couple of issues you've really pounded on. One is monitoring groundwater beneath the mine site. SB 488 states that water quality will be tested not greater than 1,000 feet below the mine site, or the depth of the pit, whichever is greater. This sounds reasonable. How far do you want them to go? The 1,200-foot extension to the design management zone has also been heavily criticized. However, the extension can only be granted at the DNR's discretion, and the zone cannot extend beyond the property line. Additional protections could be negotiated in the local agreement to prevent that zone from extending within 1,200 feet of private wells. And as Bob already said, Amendment 13 makes the mining company responsible for any damage to private wells. Your last claim regarding the filling of streams and ponds is one you have repeated to the point of fear-mongering. Current law is very confusing, but does permit the rerouting of streams, particularly intermittent streams, on a case-by-case basis. But permits can only be obtained if you own the land. SB 488 state streams can be rerouted with the owner's consent. It also streamlines the process because the ore body can't be moved, and trucking tailings presents its own environmental concerns. However, the DNR is still responsible for maintaining downstream protections. You've hammered this point so hard that people actually believed the mining company may try to fill in the Tyler Forks River. That's simply preposterous. Let me remind you, as Bob said, about 1/3 of Iron County is covered by wetlands, and we average 200 inches of snow annually. The likelihood of finding a 4,000-acre parcel, which is approximately the size of the proposed mine site, without an intermittent stream on it is almost non-existent. You've always stated that separate statutes should exist for ferrous mining, but your bill just makes a few cosmetic changes to current law. The underlying problems with current law will still exist if your bill is enacted. Compromise solutions to the minor objections you have to SB 488 should be easily addressed. A recent publication by the Wisconsin's Taxpayers Alliance also recognizes this. So why didn't it happen? Well, perhaps the reason is political. I have here a Scott Walker recall petition, not only signed by you, but circulated by your wife. And thanks to the organizations Wisconsin Grandsons of Liberty and We the People of the Republic, I can also tell you that most of your Democratic colleagues also signed a petition, as well as Representative Janet Bewley. And Representative Milroy, who is with you today, not only signed, but he also circulated petitions. And now you say you want to work with the governor and create a bipartisan bill. On our last trip to Madison, the Democratic senators made it very clear that they will vote with you in a bloc. So have you sacrificed the prosperity of your district to make a political point?
Yes.
Senator Jauch, you placed a lot of blame and haven't accepted any of the responsibility that your actions have caused to further divide the state. This is your district, and the buck stops with you. If you have no intention of reaching reasonable compromise on SB 488, please don't waste our time anymore. We'll wait and elect someone who truly represents.
Well, I've got a list of people that are certain, if you want to fill in a slip. They're in the back, people sign in, but which one down, we think if you know. The next then is Maxine, I'm sorry, Maxine, from Butternut, I can't.
Well, my question is a really simple one, and I really love listening to everyone that has worked really so hard. So I also am going to yield my time.
Thank you, Maxine. Next is Perry Ellismore, followed by George Soderman. And then I've got Bill Stutz, Ryan Derry. So it gives you an idea of Perry.
My name is Perry Ellismore. I'm a Hurley school board member.
I don't know if they compare to Perry.
Okay. How's that? Better?
Yes.
Okay. First of all, my name is Perry Ellismore. I'm a Hurley school board member. Just like everybody else, we have concerns about. My concern, what I'm going to address here is going to be really short because two speakers previous have done a real good job pretty much conveying my thoughts. First of all, I'd like to say that I'm not a member of either party, Democrat or Republican. I would be ashamed to admit if I was. The way this process has worked out, it's obvious that there is no such thing as compromise. You mentioned the word compromise, whether it be Republican or Democrat, that word just doesn't exist. You know, Mr. Jauch, at some point, the citizens have to make a stand. And I guess the time has come. Unfortunately, you may be the person that we have to use as an example. If that's what it takes to get the rest of everybody's attention, that's what we're going to do. And I guess that's all I have to say.
So be it.
Followed by Bill Stutz, followed by Brian Dari, followed by Leland, I think it's Saxman. George, Bill Stutz, Ryan Dari. I don't know if that's a D or a M. I can't tell. You, George, or George Souther. Okay, George.
I don't have much to say about this situation except I'm a senior citizen here, and everything has been talked about the young people working and 700 jobs. And my concern is there's many of us like this coming in retirement age, past retirement age, and get ready for the other age. I believe that the spin-off jobs would be important for us. I hear all the talk going back and forth and contradicting and the help that should be given to the people who voted for your office and the rest of these offices. I think that the area here has stuck together, all waiting and hoping that the mining truck will come. They said about the water situation, fine, look at open pit and Wakefield. That was a big
cost would be.
I think that people here in this local area, Iron County, Michigan, and the outstanding other counties have stuck together and want to see something done. And they keep coming and stuff in different meetings and have to stand out and do the rest of the stuff. But when we got to pay our taxes, they're there.